Welcome to the Daily Fantasy Flex Podcast. This is the NBA edition. I know it is the first week of NFL, but we're going to record an NBA pod just because we miss it. It's been a while since we've got to talk some NBA on a podcast or a show or anything like that. So if you guys didn't see the win totals by Westgate came out last week. Unfortunately, we were getting ready for some NFL stuff, so we didn't have a chance to jump on right then. But we're recording this Tuesday morning, September 5th, and we're going to run through the win totals and just our thoughts on those projections for teams, where we think some value might be found, and then we'll talk some of the trades and some NBA futures. So definitely an exciting pod to just get back together and talk some basketball. And, of course, I had to bring in my fellow Lapper basketball guys, Justin, Phan, Jay Persson. Jay, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. It's good to be back on the pod with you guys. It's definitely been a while. I know you've been busy with golf pods frequently, NFL right on the corner, but we've been itching for some pods. I'm on the team that the NBA offseason was more exciting than the NBA postseason last year. For most people, they're probably not for Justin because of the Warriors, but yeah, we have a lot to talk about. I think, there's a lot of news to digest. So I think starting off with these win totals as we kind of inch towards the regular season is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. Justin, you've been enjoying your summer?
Yeah, I don't know what to do with my hands or anything on these pods anymore. It's been so long. What do I do? It's good to be back though. NBA, stays winning. Just an incredible offseason, just full of excitement and just unpredictability, just all around. And we got week one of NFL coming up, but I wouldn't be surprised if the NBA hijacks it somehow with something crazy coming out of the blue, like it usually does.
Yeah, NBA is completely year-round now, as we saw with the Kyrie trade, which we'll get into, obviously, in this pod. So we have the win totals from Westgate for every team. They're not out on every site now, but Westgate was the first to release among, the Vegas books, and I'm sure we'll get some win totals out on some other sites pretty soon. So we're going to go through those and talk about which teams we think, they might be the most off on. So I've compiled a list of teams that I think have the sort of biggest discrepancies. One thing I will note real quickly before we get into the nitty gritty here is that two respected analysts, Kevin Pelton and then Andrew Johnson, you might know him as Counting Baskets, they do release their RPM projections. So NBA is kind of cool, especially with RPM. It's a stat where you can it is additive, so you can project the team based on our projected RPM values, which is real plus minus. So they have released their projected win totals for each team. I aggregated those, and these are the teams with the biggest discrepancies between the win projections from KP and Andrew and the win totals of Westgate in their release. So we're going to run through these. This is the biggest discrepancies and talk about whether we think we agree with the total, whether we do agree with their projections that there's a discrepancy, and what we should do. First one is probably maybe the biggest discrepancy, I think, among some of the sharp guys in Vegas is the Boston Celtics. They are projected for 56.5 wins is their over-under, and both KP and Andrew have them projected under 50 wins now with the trade going through. Obviously, losing Jay Crowder, who was a very, very big RPM darling, was probably, I think, the most underrated part that people are not talking about. Obviously, switching Isaiah and Kyrie is sort of a big thing. Both of them are maybe overrated, maybe underrated, depending on the day, depending on whether you're looking at offense versus defense. But, very interesting trade. Definitely changes up the Celtics roster. 56.5 is really, really high. And all of these sharp projections are going under by quite a bit. Based on the aggregation here, a lot of these projections are 7 or 8 wins under. Justin, I'll kick to you first. What are your thoughts on this high total for the Celtics?
Yeah, the Celtics are just really interesting overall, just because they had the best record in the East last year, went to the Eastern Conference Finals, but they had the highest churn of any team. They're returning just 4 players from last year: Al Horford, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, and Terry Rozier. And they enter the season with a lot of question marks just in general. Who starts next to Al Horford? How much can the rookies contribute right away? you know, 5 of the 14 players on the roster haven't played a single minute in the NBA. So there's just a lot of inexperience on the back end. And I think the common argument you'll see from the average person is that, you know, they won 53 games last year. They traded for Kyrie. They signed the best free agent available in Gordon Hayward. Why wouldn't they be able to go from 53 wins to 57, 58, 59, whatever? But, you know, I think that starting point is a little flawed. You know, they had the point differential of a 48-win team. They were 7th in net rating, 8th in point differential. So I think they really outperformed their actual play last year. I think they were closer to a 50-win team than a 53-win team. And then, you know, I think the biggest concern with this team is defense. You look at defensive real plus minus, you look at defensive rating, they lost 4 of their 6 best defenders from last year, and that doesn't even include Avery Bradley. So I think they have a good chance to finish as a top 5 offense, but their defense is going to be, you know, right at league average or a little below league average. I think rebounding defense is going to be a concern for this team throughout the season. You know, I think you look at last year to this year, you know, will 2018 Kyrie outperform 2017 regular season Isaiah? And my answer to that is probably no.
I don't think there's a chance. Like,
right.
Isaiah was one of the most efficient offensive players in the history of the NBA last year.
Yeah, I think people really underestimate or don't really understand how dominant Isaiah was during the regular season last year. You know, from December to February, he was averaging 31 points a game on 64% true shooting. That's just incredible. So I think, you know, you look at that move, I think playoff Kyrie is better than playoff Isaiah, but when you look at them in the regular season, there isn't much of an upgrade here from year to year. So I think that point guard going from, you know, Isaiah to Kyrie, that's a wash, really. And then you look at their other moves, you know, is going from Avery Bradley and Jay Crowder to Gordon Hayward and Marcus Morris, is that worth 5, 6, 7 wins? And for me, the answer to that is a resounding no. So I think the Celtics are much more like a 52-win team than a 57, 58-win team. I think my best argument for the Celtics hitting the over on this is Brad Stevens, the GOAT. You know, I think he's one of the few coaches in the league that actually matters, that actually makes a difference, and was a big reason why they outplayed they outperformed their expected record last year. So for me, this is a pretty sizable, you know, overestimation of their performance. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and there are other guys that we haven't even talked about. Like Kelly Olynyk is gone. Like he was a big part of their offensive spacing. So I'm actually a little concerned about their offense. Like Marcus Smart's going to have to play huge minutes. Like who else are you going to play? And, you know, you don't have Kelly Olynyk, so you're going to start Horford, who's aging at the 5. And really, this line doesn't seem to factor in. Like, teams take a little while to get used to each other. And, like, it's not like you're just flipping Isaiah for Kyrie and they're similar players. You're also bringing in Gordon Hayward, who's a ball-dominant wing. So you're kind of switching up, like, the whole offensive identity of your team. So I don't think that's really priced in. Jay, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you guys. I think this one definitely stands out way too high. That's 57 wins is insane. The biggest thing, like Justin mentioned for me, if I take the other side, is Brad Stevens' team, like you said, is entirely different. You have a coach who it switches a lot. He'll figure out how to play these guys, the rotations that they need to have. I like Horford at the 5 quite a bit. So I can see them improving in some assets, but with the 48 expected win-loss last year going to 57 this year is insane to me. I mean, Isaiah, like you guys said, he had a higher true shooting percentage than Steph last year. So he played out of his mind. So I agree. That's a wash for me as well. Kyrie, Isaiah. Last season, Isaiah versus, you know, whatever Kyrie's going to do this season. I think the biggest X factors for sure, and I think they're accounted for in this win total, which we've seen in the offseason too, how high they value Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. What's the leap those two are going to make? Which, you know, that could vary, but there's no way that's going to get them to 57 wins.
Rookies are not good.
Yeah, I think we see this. I think we see this with Philly in their win total too, which we'll get to later. I think Vegas is really overestimating the impact that rookies have, and rookies, like Brian said, they're not very good usually. And high end, usually it's like 4 to 5 wins above replacement player. So it's like. I don't know how much impact like Vegas is actually expecting from these rookies, but you know, historically it's not that great.
Yeah, and like I like Hayward in this offense. You have Hayward and Horford with their passing abilities. I think will shine in this offense. Avery Bradley, they lost him, but I mean, we talked about in the pod last year quite often how bad he was at defense. I mean, he ranked horribly across the board all season. I do think the defense is a factor this season because they did replace Isaiah with Kyrie, which is pretty similar in terms of a poor defender. So I think that will be a problem for sure. The defense, Crowder is a big one there. I still think it's a really good team, but 57 is just too ambitious.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on to another team. We're sort of just going through these teams that I identified. We're just doing it alphabetically, so no rhyme or reason. Chicago Bulls, really, really low over-under here of 21.5, which is pretty aggressively low. But then you think about what they're missing. Jimmy Butler is a pretty big loss. And then if you think about their roster this year, Chris Dunn probably starting at point guard, Zach LaVine, depending on his health, the shooting guard. So you have some new players there. Really whether Dwayne Wade is going to be on this team at the end of the year, I think is a big question mark, which is probably factored in. I think that is priced into this line. I think they're assuming that he's going to be bought out. I'm not sure exactly how much that's going to affect their win total. But 21.5 is really low, and I get the talent's not great on this team. A lot of people made fun of the Lauri Markkanen pick, even though he's been pretty good over in Europe the last couple of weeks here. But I do think there's some, at least defensive upside. Chris Dunn is one of the better on-ball defenders. Robin Lopez is a pretty underrated center, especially defensively and on the boards. Mirotic could have maybe a little bit of a rebound season. Jay, I'll kick to you first. 21.5, I get this roster is really bad. 20.5 is really, really low. There's not many teams that win 21 games or less.
Yeah, this one's really tough, man, because, you look at it, just the Bulls next to 21.5, and you're like, oh, my God, that's incredibly low. But then you actually start dissecting this roster, and, it has to be, if not the worst team, the second worst team on paper in the league. I think this offense is going to be abysmal. It's just horrible. They have tanking incentive this season. I'm not a big Hoiberg guy anyways. It's just nothing is going in their favor in terms of wanting to take the over, other than it's really, really low. So it's one out of all the ones we're doing today on this list. It's one I don't feel good about because I think the line is proper. I think this team is a 21-win team. Right around that, they're horrible. So, and not to mention, for our purpose, this is going to be the worst team in the league to watch. I agree with you. I think Wade is priced in his departure at 21.5. And not to mention for a guy like Dwayne Wade, the aging curve, the incentive to play with this team basically already ruled out of it. How many games is he going to play where he's healthy, where he's trying as hard as he can before he gets traded or bought out. If I had to pick, I'd pick the over just because 21.5 so low, but it's one I don't feel good about.
Yeah, Justin, hop in there.
Can we send a runner to Vegas to Westgate just to check the line? Because I think after the campaign injury, I think that total should be skyrocketing.
Yeah, seriously.
No, but I'm with you guys. I think it's proper. You look at LaVine coming out the ACL tear. When he does come back, I don't know if he's going to be ready for the regular season. There's been kind of mixed messages there, but when he does come back, he's going to be under significant restrictions when he does return. They have zero incentive to push him hard too. Wade's strong buyout candidate. This team is going to be bad. They're deficient on talent, have no incentive to win, and all the reason to tank for Michael Porter or Marvin Bagley. So this is just I'm with Jay. I think I'm slightly over. Maybe they go 23 wins, but I think it's close.
Yeah, no, it's definitely close. And they're not a fun team. So no one's going to bet the over and want to watch this team at the end of this season, trying to get one more win. But yeah, I guess the issue is there's just really not that many teams that win this few games. And I guess the argument is going to be that they're, going to give, Chris Dunn the reins, and he's at least a good defender. So maybe you can scrape together a defense that's not in the bottom 10. And if you have a defense that's, at least average or around that range, you can get to the 25 range.
Not with this offense, though.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to address, too, is that I think Pelton's main argument that I read for him taking the over on this is that he said that Wade's projected RPM isn't that much different than Justin Holiday and Denzel Valentine. I have a big problem with that line of thinking overall, because I think, systems like RPM or whatever, just analytic systems, they don't value or properly take into account what shot creation, the value that adds. I think people look at DeMar DeRozan, he's like 135th in true shooting percentage, but you take him out of the offense, that what kind of shots is that offense going to be able to take? You take Dwayne Wade out of this offense, you put Dunn, Valentine, Zipser, Portis, and Robin Lopez out there, they're not going to be able to create any sort of efficient offense. So when Wade gets bought out, this offense goes from bad to just abysmal. The worst. So it's I don't like that line of thinking. I think though the Bulls were better last season with Wade off the court, in this context where they're so void of talent outside of him, he makes a difference.
Yeah, no, he definitely makes a difference. I will say that I do think there is some value still to like projecting RPM stuff for guys like Wade, because Wade is like a notorious non-shooter, like will just not take any threes. So I think that there's like a gravity effect on the offense that RPM can capture just a little bit. So I agree that they're going to miss his shot creation, but I do think that he was, not exactly a super positive in terms of like just there's no spacing on the floor. So yeah, it's tough to say. I mean, so many young players, it's hard to project them in the first place. Let's move on to another team, the Golden State Warriors. They are projected not projected, they're over-under per Westgate, 67.5. They won 67 games last year. Their point differential was a 67-win team, so they nailed it. So really the thing you have to project is whether they are a half a game better or, a full game better if you want to bet the over and win that. With Durant fully in the system, they don't have to deal with any chemistry issues or getting him into the offensive flow this year. Him and Steph seem to figure things out at the end of the year as far as, taking turns and playing together. So none of that, and all you have to do is win one more game. Interesting line here for sure. Justin, I'll kick to you first on this one.
Yeah, I think the consensus that I've seen so far has been under, and pretty significantly I'm in that favor. I saw the Ringer put something out yesterday on NBA's over-unders, and Warriors under was one of their recommended bets. But, I think at the base we'll start out, they won 67 games last season, as you mentioned, with Durant missing 20 games due to injury. I think that has to play into it as well. They had one of the best off seasons of any team this year. Re-signed KD, Steph, Iggy, Livingston, Zaza, JaVale McGee, David West, and they added Nick Young and Omri Caspi. So, they're returning pretty much all their players. They even got better, their roster this season. But I think the biggest factor why I like the over here is the schedule. And, you look at this new schedule, added rest, fewer back-to-backs, no 4 games in 5 nights. That means the Warriors are going to have less reason to rest players. They're traveling 4,000 fewer miles next season than they did last season. And, I'd recommend you guys listen to that KD mailbag pod with Bill Simmons, the 2-parter. And, Bill Simmons asked KD about this new schedule and what he thought about it. And he was pretty upfront about what he thought. He said, KD said, teams are going to get exposed. And I think that's very true. I think you're not going to get these schedule losses that you ran into last year anymore. And you look at this Warriors team, only 2 of their 15 losses last season came when their starters and Iguodala all played. And you look at this Warriors team, they're on national TV 43 times next season. They're on ESPN, ABC, or TNT 31 times. And the league has done an extra good job this year of protecting those national TV games. You'll see that the weekend ABC games, the holiday games, they're all protected, meaning they're all not part of back-to-backs, to make sure that these teams are not resting players on these national TV games. So, I think you're going to see the Warriors have less incentive to rest their players, and when they're at full strength, this team is damn near unbeatable. I think KD is, we'll get to this later. I think he's probably my pick right now to win the MVP. I think he should be the favorite. We all know he's one of the most prolific scores that we've seen in a while. But I think defensively, I think people underrate him still. We saw it in the playoffs. You know, you look last year, which Warriors player do you think held opponents to the lowest field goal percentage allowed as the primary defender? It wasn't Draymond Green, it was Kevin Durant. So, you know, he's become a terror on both ends of the floor. I think, I don't know, I don't see any real reason to expect a significant step backwards. You know, if this team is, you know, playing at their full strength, they basically rolled through the entire playoffs last year. You know, I know the West is deeper with the Wolves, the Thunder, the Nuggets all getting better, but I mean, does it even matter?
I think it does. That would be my argument, is that a line of 67.5 means that you cannot like really get injured. So that's the risk. And I think last year with the West being a little bit worse than it is this year, the Warriors' talent was such that even if you lost any of their main players, it didn't matter. Like like they were going to just roll through the West, and like they were just going to roll through all their games anyway, even with an injury. I do think that some of the top teams getting better, and Jimmy Butler and Paul George coming over from the East, I do think that those top teams like the Rockets and, you know, even like the Timberwolves and some of those mid teams like you know, the Pelicans have enough talent this year where if KD goes down for 30 games, I don't think they're going to lose just 3 games out of those this year. Jay, what will hop in here? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest point, Justin, that you brought up that I agree with is by far the schedule. You know, there are 20 games, for example, last season, 4 and 5 nights, 0 this season. Like you said, way fewer back-to-backs. And you look at a team similar to the Cavs, any of these big teams that rested multiple starters and they picked up a loss. That's not going to happen this year. That's not to say these teams won't rest their players. They'll just manage their minutes differently. And you look at a team like the Warriors, you look at some teams they play, for example, the Suns, which I think we're getting into later, but they can take off the whole fourth quarter easily. And this is a team that does that consistently. So I think we'll see a lot more of that happening and no more of really resting any of these main starters. So I think that's huge. And like Justin broke down, they definitely didn't get worse from last year. No, 167. Schedule's far more friendly, which is huge. I kind of like the over too. I think what you mentioned, the one thing, there are 2 things, I guess, that you could say can possibly go against this win total. One, you can't really quantify, is that last year they were coming off losing the finals. This year, you know, where's the motivation factor?
Mm-hmm.
You can't really quantify that. And that's not really a reason to take the under in that, okay, well, they'll wait for the playoffs to really turn on. This team is just stacked. The second one, which I guess would be the one that your main fade if you take the over, is the health injury factor. And you're looking at guys who have been, I mean, Steph used to be injury prone. I don't want to like curse him right now, but you know, you're looking at guys like KD, for example. Last year he missed, I mean, that was a career high or career low, 62 games he played last season, and they still smashed. You look at second half, they led the league in defensive rating. They won't have that adjustment period that they had at times last season. So I think really by taking the under, you're kind of relying on an injury with this team, which I don't recommend doing.
To counter argue that, I think that their health also stems from their ability to blow teams out. I think if these guys are playing fewer minutes, not having to play deep in the fourth quarter consistently, then the overall injury risk diminishes. So I think that's not just luck. That's a byproduct of them not having to play as many minutes as some of these other teams that, you know, are having to, like LeBron having to play, you know, 38, 40 minutes a month. So it's, you're not going to see that with the Warriors. And I do think they got relatively unlucky. I don't think they were pristine health-wise. They lost their best player, KD, for 20 games last year, and they still won 67 games. So I don't think you can really say that, you know, they got lucky with health. Losing your best player for 20 games is not lucky.
No, it's more like Steph, really. Just the way he transformed his career from being so injury prone to just being like a machine. And yeah, you're right. It's same with Coach Bud, Pop. Coaches getting smarter with managing their players' minutes obviously leads to far fewer injuries with these players. Sure. So I agree. That's skill. That's in their favor that they still have going for them. Like I said, like I think the over is the smarter bet. And if you do take the under, you're on the side, you're banking on an injury, and there aren't really reasons to predict an injury. Yeah.
I mean, this kind of ties into our next team, the Clippers, too. But I think the schedule too allows for more rest and less injuries just overall. So I think that that's another thing that going in the Warriors' favor. Besides them not having to rest players, I think they're just getting more rest overall, which leads to reduced injury risk.
Yeah. So it'd have to be some sort of freak injury, which is just really hard to predict. So I guess the point, I'll tie this up with a bow here, is that the West is better, which is probably why this is a little bit lower, maybe a game or two lower than expected. Because if there is an injury, whether it's a freak or whether, no matter what it is, the West could take advantage of it. So that's probably why it's 67.5. But I think we all agree that normal injury luck, this team goes over. I think we're all on that same page.
Where are you guys at with so I think this will come up too with other teams and just in general with over-unders, the West versus the East. How are you guys kind of quantifying that? It's not like, Western Conference team plays only Western Conference opponents. Yeah. Is it worth I've looked up some stuff and come across some Pythagorean expected wins and if there were no conferences strength schedule. And at most I've seen it might add like 1, maybe 2 wins.
I think it's like 2.5 wins is a study that I saw. Yeah, so Nate Duncan on his Nate Duncan Dunked On podcast, he was talking about how like these teams have 60 games that you all have to play because you rotate, and then the rest of that is like your division and your thing. So if you just take your like expected win total and extrapolate it out just on the last 20 games, like the difference between like the best teams and worst team is probably going to be like 2.5 wins. So I don't think it's nearly as big of a deal as some people think.
Right.
But I mean, when you're getting to a sharp line like the Warriors, 2.5 wins is important.
I think with the Warriors, they're kind of exceptions to the rule. I think they're so far ahead of everybody else to where when they're healthy, when they're playing all their players, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're going to blow through pretty much anybody. So that's kind of what I was arguing with, like the Wolves, the Thunder, the Nuggets. Yeah, I think their margin of error is smaller. If they are resting players, they're missing players for sure. I think they can drop those games if they're missing players. But if they're playing either of those 3 teams full strength, they're going to probably win by double digits, so
it's tough to say, but that's probably right. And also like you have to think like the Warriors have the easiest schedule in the West, just by nature of they don't have to play themselves. Like that's just how it is. They don't have to play themselves, so they have the easiest schedule. Let's keep on moving here. Talk about the LA Clippers, really interesting team. Obviously losing Chris Paul. Their line for per Westgate is 43.5. And a lot of the projection models based on RPM have them really, really high as far as hitting the over. So KP has them at 48.1 last time I checked. And then Andrew, County Mascus, has them over 50 at 51.6. A big part of this is that you lose Chris Paul, who is one of the best point guards, one of the best players in the league. He was aging, so that's probably going to hurt his RPM, even though it was very strong. But then you also have guys like this trade wasn't just something that really decimated the Clippers. They did get some guys who, project really well as far as RPM and, both offensive and defensive players. Like Pat Beverly is going to be the point guard of this team. And like, he's a good point guard, both sides of the ball, like can shoot just a little bit, is a good defender. So, so some of these teams like the Bulls lost Jimmy Butler and lose all of their RPM value. And the Clippers didn't really. So that's sort of the reason that this total is so high, or that the sharp money is so much on the over. But again, like Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, this really is going to come down to health as well. Justin, I'll kick to you. No, I'm sorry, I kicked you last time. I'll kick to you first, Jay.
Yeah, I mean, this one, like we talked about, DeAndre, first of all, is an absolute machine. He won't miss a game. But the big thing here I think we'll all agree with is on paper, this team's pretty good. That's why the RPM is showing up nicely on them. It's kind of just going to come down to Blake's injury history and what happens with that. This team did fill quite a few gaps that they were missing with the bench. I mean, we've talked about this team in the past 2 years and them in the playoffs especially, their bench just gets so exposed, which matters more in the playoffs than regular season. But still, this is a team that's deeper than it's been lately. They got Lou Williams, Decker, I like a lot off the bench. Gallo's another factor that you're going to have to factor in some health with his curve. recently. Beverly, I like. So this is a team
Even
really
like Montrezl Harrell, like, is a good backup guy. You know,
Yeah,
they
like-
shouldn't have anyone behind DeAndre and Blake last year.
They got Willie Reed too. I think their
and
center
they got
depth
Milos.
Yeah.
Player I'm most excited to watch. So but that's just visuals.
Sure.
But I do think he'll be a good passer for sure. But yeah, this is a solid team if they stay healthy. If Doc can utilize his personnel, which I'm not a big Doc guy for sure, but this is a team with 43.5. I mean, if they're fully healthy, I see no reason why they won't be over that. It's just kind of coming down to what are you guys' thoughts on Blake's injuries, his health going into the season, potentially Gallo. Will Rivers take another step forward if he's logging heavier minutes? How will that go for this team? But I mean, I think you have your usual. DeAndre is like the guy who, he's a rock. He'll be good defensively. He won't miss a game. So I like the depth of this team, and I like that total too. I like the over here.
Yeah, it's interesting to try to project a rotation for them because you even have a guy like Lou Williams is on this team. Like, that's he's obviously was probably the best bench player in the league last year. So try to project him with Austin Rivers and Pat Beverly, like who's going to get the minutes there? Is Sam Dekker going to actually?
Do you want
play?
Doc to be the guy to figure that out? That's the problem.
That's their concern. Yeah, but there's so many good this team has a couple stars and Blake and DeAndre. Stars being they're really good for their position, not superstars, but really good.
Yeah.
But then the rest of the team, the numbers 3 through 10 are all just replacement or better than replacement players. So that's why the RPM projection is so high, is because theoretically, if Doc can get a good rotation, you're just not going to have many points of weakness on this team. And that's not super valuable in the playoffs when you have to really play guys shorter minutes to compete with the Houston Rockets and the Warriors of the world. But in the regular season, having the 10 guys that are all solid or better is really, really valuable. And I think that's a little bit underrated when it comes to Vegas lines. Justin, what are your thoughts on the Clippers?
Yeah, to go off what you just said, having 10 guys is very valuable. Even more so valuable when you have guys like Gallinari and Griffin who have averaged, 30% missed games over the last 3 seasons. So I think their depth is going to be really huge in terms of filling the voids when those two guys do inevitably miss games. And I think this team is built to push for a playoff spot too. And I like that too in terms of taking the over here, because I think when we're getting deep into April, May, June, getting close to the playoffs, they're going to be fighting for a playoff spot, and they're going to have incentive to win games. They're definitely nowhere near close, tanking or going for a lottery pick or going for a high pick. So they're going to have incentive to win. I think they're deep enough this year to really make a push. And generally, the biggest inefficiencies you'll see with these Vegas lines is a team loses a big player, and then they'll overestimate the impact that player will have, and they'll undershoot the win. Or we'll see a team that's really exciting, whether they add pieces like Boston or they have really nice up and coming players like Philly. They'll overshoot their win. So give me a boring team, more boring team like the Clippers this year that people are going to be sleeping on, and I'll take the over in that most of the time.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great point, is that there's public money on these public teams. People want to bet on Karl-Anthony Towns and Jimmy Butler playing together. They want to bet on, Kyrie being in Boston. These are very public teams. Even the Lakers, their total is
Lakers
usually a little bit higher than typically they should be, just because they're a public team. So that is a good point. Clippers, not a public team since they've lost CP3, and there's some buzz around the Lakers. I mean, not that they're going to be any good, but just because they got Lonzo and stuff. So Clippers, a little bit slept on, I think, this year. And I think we all agree that the over is pretty nice and hit that low total. Let's move on to another team, the Memphis Grizzlies. Really, really, really interesting line here. They've been the same team, I think, forever. They won 43 games last year. Pythagorean expectation of 42, so right along that. But then their win total this year, 37.5. KP has them quite a bit lower at 33.8, and then Andrew, counting baskets, has them at 29.6, under 30 wins, which is really impressive. So just aggregate, they expect them to, just based on those RPM RPM projections, about 6 wins under their over-under, which is already very, very low. Just really interesting line here. I'm sure that a big part of that, especially in RPM, is you just factoring in an aging curve. Marc Gasol and Mike Conley definitely didn't really feel the effects of aging last year. Had some pretty decent health, but I think that can only last for so long, and I think that there are really tying in probably the effects of
how does
aging here.
Tony Allen play into that RPM? He's still unsind, right?
Yeah,
but
I think
they're not including him. No.
Yeah, so that will. Oh, you don't think they'll re-sign him?
I don't think so. What do you guys think?
I think they'll re-sign him.
I thought they would, and that the RPM being that low kind of doesn't account for his value.
The fact that they're not saying anything about him, like as far as news goes, he's not even taking meetings with other teams, makes me think that they're just trying to figure out the contract situation.
Even then, I mean, we can do it based on if, let's say they have Tony Allen, let's say they don't. I mean, still 37.5.
I mean, I think what Tony Allen's worth at this point, like, I don't know, like a win or two, is like he's not that right. He's going to swing it. So, I mean, this team is really interesting. Memphis is usually a team that I would take the over on just because of what I said previously, with just like the public not really being into these like older teams and Vegas generally undervaluing them. But this is really pushing my love for John Hollinger, for Fizdale, for Mike Conley, for Marc Gasol. I love those guys, but man, they had a brutal offseason. They didn't improve in any way. They lost Zach Randolph. They lost Vince Carter. I have no idea what they're going to do with JaMychal Green. I have no idea what's taking so long. I'm assuming they're going to bring him back because they just have nobody at power forward if they don't. So, I mean, they lost Ben McLemore for the first month of the season with that fractured metatarsal. Chandler Parsons has 2 bad knees. He's had season-ending knee surgery in 3 straight seasons. I mean, the only positive I can really say is they got Tyreek for like 1 year, $3.3 million. I think that's pretty good value for him. But like other than that, there's so much. I don't know. I want to go over, but I'm probably coming on the under here. I think my concern is that so much of the burden is going to fall on Mike Conley and Marc Gasol to carry the load on both ends of the floor. That they're going to get overworked. They're going to get injured. They haven't actually been healthy. That healthy. Combined, they've averaged about 40 missed games over the last 2 seasons. Conley's missed 39. Gasol's missed 38. So
this is a team, like we said with the Warriors, the schedule is very favorable to Conley and Gasol. A team that's a bit older. Conley and Gasol played out of their minds last year, but this was a team too that struggled on back-to-backs, tough schedule stretches. So I think that helps them quite a bit. But you're right. I mean, you look at Conley and Gasol's numbers last year. Apply an aging curve. Gasol, are they going to be better than last year? I doubt it. They were really, really good. You look at a guy like Parsons and say, okay, well, he obviously can't be worse than last year. But how effective is he going to be coming off those injuries?
Yeah,
and then you look at
how
the
many
bench
games
here,
can he even give you?
And with us talking about like West versus East and the talent level,
right.
It didn't really hit me because, like you said, you play a lot of the East teams too. But this Grizzlies team going up against these new look Western teams, like the Wolves, like I like those teams significantly more than the Grizzlies. The Thunder, like the Grizzlies will have harder times winning those types of games against other teams that are similar in the standings with production. So I don't see them kind of having the upper hand in those types of games anymore, like they might have last year.
I think the aging curve thing is interesting because, like, if you look at it on the other end, like, what player on their team would you expect to be better than they were last year just based off aging? Like, maybe JaMychal Green is like, he gets the start at the 4 and he has his peak season at age 27. Maybe like Chandler Parsons, just because he's so bad last year, like he's just a little bit better because he is like, it's hard to be worse than he was last year, but that's not based on an age thing. He's 28. But yeah, like I don't see any guy that's going to be better. So if you factor in some, like there's the West getting better, you factor in the fact that like it's really unlikely that Conley and Gasol are going to be quite as good as they were last year. I don't think the Zach Randolph loss is going to mean a whole lot for their win total. So I don't think that's a big reason why the RPM projections are pretty low.
I think people are sleeping a little bit on Vince Carter, honestly. I think the impact that he had on that team.
He had probably more than Zebo.
He gave them pretty damn good minutes. Good leader in the locker room. I think they'll miss him for sure.
So
I saw how they shoot. They have no space on the floor.
Like how much of what we're talking about isn't factored in, right? They won 43 last year. Now it's 37.5. So I mean, how much more under do you think it is that we're applying all of this, and now you look at 37.5? This is a really tough one for me. I mean, it is factored in.
I mean, I think those projection systems, especially the one that had him below 30 games, is just kind of ridiculous to me. I think by virtue of calling it Gasol, Fizdale, they're going to squeeze way more than 29 or whatever they had at him. I think I probably put him at like 35. 36.
Yeah, I'll still take the under on 37.
I'll take the under, but I think it's close. I don't think this is like a best bet scenario. I think there are better values out there, like Boston, for example, where you can have more of an edge, but just go slightly under.
Yeah, I agree. Under's the play, but I don't think it's, super, super significant. But I would not be comfortable betting the over. Like, even if it was 35, I think it would be a stay away. Like, it's just not a team to bet on.
The point about them falling significantly under those middle teams in the West is a great one, because like even they're below Denver, below Portland, below Utah, below the Clippers. Like, they're not better than any of those teams. And I think those close games that they usually win last year, the years before, they're probably going to drop a lot of them this year.
Agree.
Yeah, cool. All right, let's move on to another team, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Obviously, the big addition for them, Paul George coming over from the Indiana Pacers. Indiana Pacers are in trouble this year, but we're not going to talk about them. So Thunder, interesting, last year they won 47 games, but because of the heroics of Russell Westbrook in the clutch, they overperformed their Pythagorean expectation. They won 4 more games than was expected based on that. And then their win total is 51.5. So this is interesting. Obviously, they had a really, really good offseason, not just with Paul George, but also with just some of their other additions as well. So I think the question and some of the points that I've seen made around the league is even if you took the 43 wins that they were supposed to win, so you regress them based on some just not Westbrook being an insane person in the clutch, is Paul George worth 8.5 wins? Is he an 8.5 win player? I would say yes. I think this is a really, really intriguing line. I'm not sure if I have a super, super strong take on the over versus the under. I think this is a pretty sharp line, in fact. Jay, what are your thoughts on this team and the line in general?
Yeah, this is a team similar to last year in that on paper, I like them a lot. I like the defense they have, top 10 in D last year. At full strength, this is a solid team. You factor in Paul George. You're right. How many wins is he worth? 52 is a lot of wins. I mean, even you look at last year, some teams – the Cavs won 51, the Raptors won 51 in the East. So 52 is lofty when you're looking at 44 expected wins from last year. You add Paul George. Will there be an adjustment period with Paul George? How will this bench hold up? We saw this bench last year for sure get exposed at times. Health last year was big for this team. They were all machines: Russ, Robertson, Steven Adams. Can they handle any injuries to those 3 players?
So what are your thoughts on the bench, Jay? Because I think that Raymond Felton, just having one of the big storylines last year was that when Russell Westbrook went out, they went from a plus 6 point difference to a minus $1 million. And Raymond Felton's not he's 33, he's not the greatest point guard in the world, but they're playing campaign and just guys that had no business of even being on the floor. Even having Raymond Felton dribble the ball up the floor, it's got to be worth a couple wins.
Yeah, it is, but it's also defensively with Cantor. His bench just gets killed. But yeah, you're right with Russ. Then you get into the factor too. Now that they have PG staggering when Russ does go out of the game, will they do that? We saw. It's Billy Donovan. It's going to be tough with him to incorporate that into the season. I initially like this team. I like the over, but 52 is a lot. It's really tough. This one for me is probably the one I'm least confident in taking either side out of all the teams we've talked about today.
Yeah, the bench is going to be interesting. But if you just look at their starting lineup projected, Justin, all right, let's do this. It's going to be Russell Westbrook, Robertson, PG, should be Patrick Patterson, and Steven Adams. That's what I think the smart person would project them as. based on their starting lineup, how many teams have a better starting lineup? And like, is that not a top 3 defense right there?
I think they're going to be very, very good defensively. Top 5 for sure in my book. I think they can push for top 3 definitely. I think actually this might sound weird, but I think the key to this team, and I feel a lot better about the over if I knew Patterson was healthy. I think he is so crucial for this team in so many ways. Not only defensively, like we just mentioned, but opening this team up offensively with his spacing. Yeah. And for a team that shot a league worst 32.7% last season, adding Paul George, adding Patrick Patterson is going to improve that offense immensely. Not only creating some openings for Russell Westbrook, going full speed down the lane, but I think it improves things for Steven Adams too.
Adams and Cantor, like you can just let Cantor be on the second. You don't have to worry about bringing him in the first.
Right. Even a guy like Adams, I think we talked about him in the preseason pod. I had high expectations for him coming this kind of last season, and he disappointed. I think a lot of that was that they had so little space, and that defense was just sagged on these pick and rolls, and Adams just had no room whatsoever to operate. You surround them with some shooters. They got Dougie McDermott too as another shooter to really open up things. Yeah. I mean, they really had an A+ offseason. They just kind of nailed exactly what they needed to address. And I think if Patrick Patterson enters the season healthy, and is able to contribute, to the level that we kind of expect from him, then I think this team will go over. But right now, not knowing kind of what his status is, he's coming off that left knee scope. August 10th, he had it on, out 4 to 6 weeks. I don't know where he's at heading in the season. So this is going to be one that I'm going to avoid. I think this is a sharp line, though. But I think that they have the room here for sure to exceed it. So I'd go slightly over, but I'm not that confident about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's definitely fair. Really, really good line, but I think we all agree the Thunder are going to be really, really good this year.
Yeah, that's a good starting 5. I mean, I love it. Defensively, it's awesome.
Oh, yeah, they're going to just rock some people. All right, let's move on. Definitely one more team I want to talk about, and we can hop around maybe just last couple minutes. Philadelphia 76ers, definitely a darling team of the public. We can tell that by their line. They won 28 games last year, even though that was probably just a smidgen lucky. Point differential of a 26-win team. And in their line this year, a whopping 42.8. So we're talking a jump of about 14 wins here. KP and Andrew have them very much under. KP has them at 33.5 wins. And Andrew has them at 33.9, so aggregate score right around 33.5. So almost like 9-win differential between their over/under and their projection. Obviously, really, this depends on how many games you're going to get out of Joel Embiid. That is probably the hardest thing in the NBA to project this year, and really, like his status affects the Eastern Conference more than just about anyone. Jay, I know that you had a fairly strong opinion on this one, so I'll kick to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is the most ambitious, even more so than the Celtics, high over-under. This one's insane to me. Like we talked about earlier, we briefly mentioned rookies and how unproductive they usually are in the first season's team. Fultz, Ben Simmons. I mean, I don't think Fultz will be like a positive for this team this year at all. There's no way. Covington's coming off a torn meniscus. Embiid, I mean, what even is the latest on him right now? Like, how many games will he play this season? Simmons, another rookie. It's just like I like Redick, but he's not going to swing 14 wins. So I think you look at health, like you said, mainly with surrounding Embiid. You look at these rookies. I mean, it's like best case scenario, they get to 43 wins. So this one's like, I don't know, really, really easy. I mean, you look at all the projection systems, way under. This one for me, you try to argue the over for this, and it's going to come down to, okay, Fultz will be Rookie of the Year.
Embiid plays 80 games or 70 games.
Plays like a relatively full schedule. And if you want to bet on that, I mean,
I think if he plays a lot of games, if he plays 70-plus games, then I do think that this is interesting. But he played 31 last year. He's been injured, obviously. I mean, they were over a 43-win pace when Embiid was on the floor last year. So I guess that's the argument, but it's really hard to project a guy who has been injured for the last couple of years and only played 31. And I think the biggest thing for me with this Embiid injury situation is that even if he like if he gets injured at all, whether it's just like rolled his ankle, like they are going to be so cautious.
His defense too.
Yeah, his defense, yeah. But they're going to be so cautious with him. Like if he rolls his ankle, like they're going to like just leave him out 10 games, just to make sure that it's not anything crazy.
They'll be cautious with Simmons too.
Yeah. They'll be cautious with all of them for sure.
It's not going. Fultz is not going to be getting them that many wins.
Yeah, Justin, what are your thoughts on the 76ers? Just a really high line here.
Yeah, I think I'm with you guys on the under. Not only with the Embiid health, but this starting lineup, or the projected starting lineup, hasn't played a single minute together, and they're returning 2 of their 5 starters from last year. So they've got to integrate Fultz, they got to integrate Redick and Ben Simmons, and Fultz and Simmons both being rookies and being like the 2 primary initiators in this offense scares the heck out of me. I just think that offense is going to have a lot of growing pains. And another thing with them, their schedule is not favorable at all to start the year. So 10 of their first 14 games are on the road, and 16 of their first 21 games are against 500 or better teams. Ooh. So you kind of factor that in, that early schedule. They're going to – I expect them to get off to a slow start. They're going to be a second-half team, but not good enough in the second half to hit this 42.5. I think realistically, I probably put them around 35 to 37, enough for them to contend for that 8 seed in the East, especially with it being so bad in that range this year. So I think they can still make the playoffs, but at 42.5 is just ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Well, what would be like your best bet, Justin? Like, do you think that the Boston or the 76ers total is more egregious?
Well, the Sixers don't have Brad Stevens, so I'm gonna go under on the Sixers. Yeah,
I think the safest bet is probably on the Sixers under. Yeah, I think that we all sort of. I really like the Celtics under as well. So that would be up there for me, but I think we all agree that 76ers under. Definitely. All right, let's talk just a couple more things. I did want to just really briefly hit on the effect of this Cavs trade, just in terms of DFS, in terms of Vegas lines, futures, whatever, or Real Life Basketball Talk. And then we're gonna just talk about a couple futures to end. So let's talk about the Cavs trade. We just haven't been on a pod to digest this. We'll definitely get into like the nitty gritty, like how we're going to actually project fantasy points for the Cavs in Boston, in another month or so once we get closer to the season. But Justin, higher level, what were your thoughts on the trade? Then now, how do you think it affects the team's futures? Just general thoughts about this.
Yeah, I think the Cavs, my initial reaction was that it was an absolute smash what they got in return, especially when you compare it to what the other teams like Indiana and Chicago got for their stars. I know they're on shorter contracts, 1-year, 2-year deals, and Kyrie's got 3, but that was already factored into the return that they got. So, I think that was a total smash. Isaiah's hip status with the injury makes it a little bit, more tenuous. I think it probably takes it down from like an A+ to an A for me, because you can argue that Isaiah was the least valuable part of that deal. I think the most valuable part of that deal was that pick to kind of ensure that future once LeBron ends up leaving. I think that's likely that he ends up leaving after this year to kind of kickstart that rebuild process. And then I like that Crowder contract a lot, one of the best value contracts in the league. I think it has a lot of trade value down the line too, if they want to flip him. So as good as Isaiah was, I think he was the least valuable part of that deal. So him, his status for the opener and his health being up in the air doesn't really change the calculus too much for the Cavs, in my opinion. I'm curious to see, what LeBron ends up looking like this year. I think, he can really push for the MVP award. I'm curious to see, how much he has to kind of put his foot down on the gas pedal during the regular season. In years past, he's been able to kind of coast and really save himself up for that postseason run. This season, especially if Isaiah is out for the first, month or two, what kind of LeBron are we going to be looking at here? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I don't see why it'd be any different in that. How many years has been in the finals in a row? Like he'll coast in regular season to the point where it's been like 4 years in a row where we're like, oh wow, he's actually declining or he's human. And then the postseason comes around, that stretch, and then you get the LeBron James that we all think he's going to be like. So I don't see it being that different. I do think the big thing here, and with this trade, I agree too. Also that I think the Cavs definitely came out ahead. This trade was funny for a lot of reasons, primarily because you have majority of the public overrating both Kyrie and Isaiah. And then you have a majority of the public thinking Kyrie is just significantly better than Isaiah was, which we already mentioned. Isaiah was better than Kyrie last year, at worst even. So like you can't really say Kyrie will be better than Isaiah was last year and back it up with anything. So for me, with this trade short term is definitely Isaiah's hip, which obviously everybody's talking about. And you look at a potential surgery for him, he's out 3 to 4 months. What is his team going to do if that's the case? You have D-Rose. How much will LeBron step up if that happens in the regular season?
Right.
We have I went through and looked at like torn hip labrums, and you have Wilson Chandler, who it's affected. I mean, he's had good seasons here and there, but he's the big thing with all these guys that have these hip injuries is it continues to happen. Gerald Henderson continues to have hip issues. He's out this entire season. You have guys like Jordan Hill, Looney, LaMarcus Aldridge had hip problems. So there aren't that many guys. So if you're looking at Isaiah, like the optimistic view, it's not good even looking at it that way. Realistically, you look at a surgery 3 to 4 months out, what's this team going to do with that? So I think from a fantasy perspective for us, DFS with this offense, especially, maybe the first couple of months, where are you guys kind of looking at that with, with like Rose?
You got to look at Rose and Kevin Love too. Kevin Love, without Kyrie on the court last season, averaged 1.4 DK points per minute. He's going to be a little bit more than that usual catch and shoot guy that he's kind of been pegged into over the last couple of years. So yeah, I think the calculus really changes early on in the season if Isaiah's out. So we'll see. On Boston side, what's your guys' kind of takeaway from this? I think Kyrie getting out of LeBron's shadow, asserting himself as a man. I think his general production is gonna trend upwards. I think Gordon Hayward loses a little. I think he's not going to be a guy that we're going to look too much at in DFS anymore. Al Horford's going to be a guy I'm going to look at situational. I think his role doesn't change too much. He's still a great facilitator. Isaiah's usage was actually higher than Kyrie's usage. So I don't think that's a huge difference there. And Al Horford's a guy that you want to target at home with rest. He does a lot better in the situation. So what are you guys' takeaways on Boston's side?
I think the question is, and like the biggest storyline in the NBA, one of them at least, is can Kyrie run an offense? Like we saw him in Cleveland, like before LeBron got there, the Cavs weren't very good. The offenses weren't very good. But anytime LeBron was off the floor, and this is probably something that bothered him, and it was a big reason why he wanted to go be his own guy, is that the narrative, and it was backed up by data. Anytime LeBron stepped out for a game or was off the floor, the Cavaliers were awful. Offensively, defensively, everything. Kyrie statistically just could not run the offense by himself and make it efficient or make the team good. So I can understand why he wants to go do his own thing, but I think it remains very much to be seen whether the Boston Celtics are actually going to be good with Kyrie using 30% of the possessions and trying to work off the ball with Hayward. Maybe so. I mean, he shot
smart too.
Yeah, I mean, he had almost like a 70% effective field goal percentage on catch and shoot shots last year. So like he has the game to be able to run an offense efficiently and be good. The question is just whether he's going to do it. So I don't know, honestly, how the Boston Celtics are going to be next year, because I'm not exactly sure what type of guy Kyrie is going to be. I mean, he's not going to Boston and forcing his way out to like all of a sudden change. And like if he was going to play team basketball all the time, he would have stayed with LeBron James, right?
Well, this team's built pretty well, the Celtics, with Horford being a far above average passing center. You got Hayward who can pass. Smart will log a lot of minutes. You have Brad Stevens drawing up plays. I don't think it's going to be like raw like it was when Kyrie first went to Cleveland, where it's just like, here you go, here, let's see what you can do with these teammates, the personnel. I mean, the Celtics team is built pretty nice.
Yeah, Kyrie running the offense in Boston under Brad Stevens is dramatically different than him running it in Phoenix or him running it in Cleveland pre-LeBron. It's way different. And you mentioned Hayward he likes having the ball, but he's very, very good off the ball as well. I think that's a very underrated part of his game too. So him and Horford, I think he'll be just fine. Kyrie this year.
I think he'll be fine personally. I'm not sure how Boston, like even last year or like the last couple of years, like it wasn't like Kyrie was playing without, like he would, like when he would play when LeBron was sitting out for games. Like, he got to play with J.R. Smith. He got to play with Kevin Love. Like, these are very good offensive players to space the floor. He had plenty of space to work with. He had the ball. He could kick the shooters, and they weren't good. So, like, I'm not saying he's not going to be good. I think Kyrie's a fine player, and I'm really excited. He's still really young. Like, I know why they did the trade, and I even respect it. But like, DFS wise, I'm not skeptical. I'm just very unsure what this offense is going to look like.
Are we expecting Kyrie to be priced up a little relative to where he was last year? I would think that would be
maybe a little, but I mean, I don't think his DFS production will change too much. I mean, I think Isaiah in this offense, what he did.
I think he'll be overpriced.
I think he'll be overpriced
earlier
too.
in the year.
I think he'll be overpriced. I think he'll be more expensive next year than he was last year.
I mean, he's a guy anyways. You didn't really go that much when he was like 8,800 last year consistently, unless one of the big three was out or they just had, an amazing matchup. So I don't think that will change too much to where we're going to be talking about going Kyrie consistently.
Yeah, and he'll have high ownership too.
Yeah, like they don't have like a incredibly fantasy friendly game outside of scoring anyways, neither of those point guards. Steals, assists, rebounds.
Okay. Yeah, good conversation for sure. We're definitely going to keep on talking about this stuff. We'll do some more videos and pods and articles over the next month as we get ready for the NBA season on team changes, stuff that we're looking at for sure. Lightning round, just going to real quickly in the last couple of minutes here talk about any futures that we thought is interesting. So it could be odds to win the championship, MVP odds, odds to win the East, West, division odds, whatever it is, any NBA future that we think is interesting. Lightning round, we'll talk about this real quick. Justin, you want to roll off one first for us?
Yeah, I was in Vegas a couple weeks ago for the Mayweather-McGregor fight, and the odds for the NBA came out a couple of days later while I was still there. So I put a lot of money already on the Wizards winning their division. I have it at 3 different price points. I got it at plus 130, I got it even, I got it at minus 130. I think all those three price points are incredibly favorable for this team. Just basically returning all their key guys. They upgraded at backup point guard over Brandon Jennings, who was absolutely abysmal, atrocious during the playoffs last year, especially. I think they'll like what they get from Tim Frazier. I don't think they lose much in Bojan, going from him to Jody Meeks. I really like this Wizards team, and you got the Heat. I think they're very erratic. Tale of two halves. Are really bad in the first half, overplayed their expectation in the second half. They basically just paid all their free agents. So I'm really skeptical that once all these guys got their contracts, they're going to come back and kind of play at the same level. I think, them and the Hornets, I think they're going to improve with Dwight Howard too, but I don't see any of those two teams as real threats to the Wizards.
How did you get them at plus 130?
That's where they opened at originally, and I was there the day that was released. They were like 13-10, and so I got that, and I kept putting more and more and more. So I have a lot of money.
Yeah, you're really only. I mean, the Wizards for sure. It's a team you look at. It's just about health. Like you're fading an injury is it. That's it. So if one of those start, which they have had, pretty good health outside of Beal. You look at guys like Gortat. Playing a lot of games. Otto Porter shot I don't know if he'll shoot that well again, but still, yeah. And then even if you do look at the Heat, Deion Waiters played out of his mind. James Johnson played out of his mind. Like, are they going to be as good as they were last year?
I still have a timeshare on Waiters Island, but other than him, I'm selling.
Yeah, agree. Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, I'm definitely on board with that. Really, it's just going to come down to the Wizards' bench is still bad. I know they upgraded at point guard, but it's still bad. But, if none of those starters have a serious injury.
It's very safe.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Jay, you got any futures that are interesting to you?
Yeah, looking through, I mean, you have, Golden State minus 275 make the finals. I don't really like betting on that at 275. One that stood out to me a little bit, I think it's a fun bet, is kind of the MVP race this year. Justin mentioned earlier, Durant definitely up at the top. I think Kawhi right now, at least on Bovada, is the favorite, which is tough to kind of get behind, which is also why he's like 375, plus 375. One that stood out to me, I think, who can take that next step again is Giannis at plus 1,000. I like that bet too. That stands out to me as good value. And, that's a guy I think won't really be up with the LeBron, KD, Kawhi range, but could easily be there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely some interesting guys. I mean, even LeBron at plus 450. I mean, not amazing odds, but like Kyrie leaving if they don't miss a beat, you could see the narrative. Like these things are all
like. No, give me Durant at plus 550. He has the 4th best odds. I think that's the best.
Yeah, but the team is so stacked. It's just
but so if we're gonna go over on 67 or and a half or whatever, you think if they win 70 games, he's their best player, he doesn't win MVP?
I don't know. I mean, he's their best player last season.
Yeah, but he missed 20 games.
Yeah, I know.
The problem is like him and Steph like cannibalize each other's votes.
Yeah, exactly.
But so you almost need a player that's just like runs the team by themselves.
I'm not against it. Like I think he should be.
Yeah,
I just don't think he'll get the votes.
Yeah,
it's not that I don't think he's worth it. I don't know if he'll get the votes on that team.
The Rookie of the Year odds on Dennis Smith were really, really good. He was like plus. He was like a 10-1 favorite before Summer League, but now he's like on full body. He's like plus 300. I think really the only guys that even have a chance are Alonzo, Dennis Smith, and Ben Simmons. They are the guys with the 3 highest odds. But if you look like that is a pretty predictable race. Kevin Pelton, we've discussed a lot. Like almost every year going back to when the award first came into the league is if you just add up assists per game, rebounds per game, and points per game, the person at the top wins Rookie of the Year. So it's almost like you could think of it as a fantasy like prop. Like who's going to be the best fantasy rookie, and then like that is probably going to be the NBA Rookie of the Year.
I'll take Dennis Smith.
I mean, I'm big on Lonzo.
I know you like Lonzo.
I love Lonzo, but 225 plus for Lonzo plus 300. I mean, that's not a big difference.
I think Lonzo is correctly the favorite here, but I do think Dennis Smith and Ben Simmons are the other 2 guys that at least have a shot. Like Jason Tatum,
he's not going to play enough.
Yeah, I don't think so.
De'Aaron Fox playing behind George Hill.
This should be a good race though, especially compared to last year. Was just a joke.
Yeah, like Sarge and Brogdon.
Like that was horrible. This one should be exciting. I mean, I got to go Lonzo.
Yeah, I go Lonzo as well. Any other bets? So you guys want to get out of here? It was good catching up on some NBA for sure.
Cleveland minus 160 to make finals for the 40th time in a row.
I would say like just on odds to make the finals or to win the title. I think some of these West teams are a little bit undervalued just because like really all they have to do is beat Golden State, which is not
all they have to do is beat Golden State.
Like it's the same with taking their under. If you're taking any team to win the West over the Warriors, it's just coming down to injuries. That's it for me.
They're playing.
There's no other way.
They're gonna play their full guys.
But here's my point here. Like if you look at odds to win, it's Golden State, then it's Cleveland, then it's Boston. In order to win the title, Cleveland is going to have to beat Golden State. Boston's going to have to beat Golden State, and they have worse odds. Like Houston, like if they beat Golden State, so what I'm saying, like every team has to beat Golden State. So you're really just looking at the odds of beating Golden State, not the odds of winning the title. And Houston has lower odds than Boston.
I see what you're saying. There's value.
There's value.
Yeah, you have to be Golden State, but if Houston gets to the finals,
then
they're not a gimme to be the Cavs. I think they're pretty even. So that's the argument, is that you have to face Golden State before
which will probably go 7 games.
I mean, I think if you beat Golden State, you're probably going to win the finals. I think if Houston raises their level of play that highly to beat the Warriors, then I think they're their favorites. But I don't think it's like a gimme. So
we could look at like the Spurs last year when they were smashing the Warriors, and then we had the cheap shot on Kawhi. Like that was interesting up to that point on the road with they're like up 25.
So, one thing I want to look at too, another prop I want to throw out there is to check the prices on different books on the division race, the Southwest division, on the Spurs versus the Rockets. And I would guess, I haven't looked at it yet because I haven't been in Vegas for a couple of weeks, and they don't have it on Bovada. But I'm presuming the Rockets are the favorite and the Spurs are probably like plus 140, I would guess, or something. I like that value for the Spurs to win that division. I think they had a bad offseason, don't get me wrong.
Rudy Gay.
Rudy Gay. Plus they whiffed on Chris Paul. They didn't really, Tony Parker's hurt. So I think the perception.
Although that's like a positive.
I think Tony Parker being hurt,
But like
but I think that's what I'm saying. The public, the perception is that they don't have Parker, they're going to suffer. But they've been better with Patty Mills. Let me say that. But I think I would still, if I was to bet money, I think the Spurs are even or slight favorites to win that division in the regular season. I think the Rockets are the better team, obviously in the playoffs, but in the regular season, I think the Spurs could win more games.
I bet the Rockets are going to have better odds, though. If you just look at the Western Conference odds to win, Rockets are plus 550, Spurs are plus 650. So the Rockets will definitely be favored to win the division. So, yeah, maybe some value there once we see the line for sure. All right, we were going to end it there. Definitely always fun to get together and talk basketball again. We'll have some more content videos. We're definitely in the middle of the first week of NFL, so that's definitely taking priority for a lot of people on the site. But we're going to have more NBA content over the next month for sure as we get ready for a really good season of NBA DFS again. So thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon.